Petronella McGovern writes psychological thrillers, and her latest book, The Liars, is a family drama wrapped in a murder mystery. It's her third novel. Her debut novel, 6 Minutes, was shortlisted for the Ned Kelly Awards, the David Awards, and her second novel, The Good Teacher, is popular with book clubs and was longlisted for the David Awards. Thank you so much for joining us today, Petronella.
Oh, it's such a joy to be here. I'm so excited.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I'm so excited for what this book is going to do, because it is the definition of a page turner. Your writing is so real, so fantastic. The story is brilliant. I don't have enough good words to say, but for listeners who haven't got a copy yet, and they should, can you tell us what it's about?
Oh, thank you, Val. It's such a relief. Like, you write the book for so long, and when it comes, and early readers have said much like you. So I'm so excited. So The Liars is the story really of a seaside town called Kinton Bay. And it's bouncing back after the bushfires and the floods and the pandemic. And it relies on tourism for survival. So it's finally getting back on its feet. And then 15-year-old Sienna is out in the national park, and she's doing a history assignment, and she's videoing, and she finds a skull. Now, she thinks this skull is related to the assignment she's doing about the untold history of the town. And she thinks the skull is related to a massacre committed by the town founder that no one wants to talk about. So she films it, puts it on her YouTube, sends it to all the media channels, and it goes absolutely viral, and the news stations pick it up. It's all over the news that night. And certain members of the community are absolutely furious about this, what they see as negative publicity when the town's just getting back on the feet. But in the meantime, Sienna's mum, Mary, is a local journalist, and she thinks that her daughter is wrong, that the skull is actually related to a teenage schoolmate who went missing back in the 1990s. They used to have teenage parties out there in the national park in a place called the Killing Cave. And these teenage parties always ended badly. So she thinks, yes, this schoolmate who went missing, who was her enemy, but her husband's best friend, who they haven't talked about for years and years and years. So as the police start to investigate, more bones are discovered, more questions are asked, and really Sienna and Mary and the whole community have to work out who's telling the truth and who are the liars.
So what gave you this idea?
It's quite a complex story with many different threads.
It is.
And really, I guess a few different things came together for me. One part of it was, and because it's a family drama, it's a mystery, it's a crime thriller, it's contemporary discussion of things. So I think for me, part of it started, my daughter turned 15, and she started going to teenage parties, and I thought, at least girls are treated better back than when I was 15. So originally I was kind of thinking about this story of how things had changed from a mother to a teenage daughter. And then around the same time, or as I was starting to look at this, then things came out in the media, the Chanel Contos survey in the eastern suburbs of Sydney about the private schoolgirls who did a survey on the number of sexual assaults at teenage parties. Then the Brittany Higgins case in Parliament House came out. Then we started marching again, women justice marches for women, marches for justice for women, that's what I'm trying to say. And I saw that things, they'd changed a little since I was a teenager, but not as much as I'd hoped. And certainly my daughter started telling me things. And so I came up with this idea, and it's none of it's autobiographical, but something happened to a mother when she was 15, when she'd gone to teenage parties, and now she's really overprotective of her daughter particularly. She has twins, but the daughter she's particularly overprotective of. And so she's really cracking down on her and watching every minute. and hoping that things are different. And her paranoia sort of doesn't help what happens in the story.
But as you say, it is quite a complex story, because you have the mother, Mary's story, from, well, currently, but obviously from her past. You have her daughter's point of views, because you write from different points of view. So you have Sienna, the daughter's experience and story. You have, this stuff of what's going on in the background of the history assignment and all of that. And you have, the interactions of the father, Rollo, and what's going on in his life and so on. So you write from different points of view, and you have this a number of complex threads. And yet when a reader is reading this, it is just seamless. So how in the world did you manage in your head or on paper or on Post-it notes, whatever, all of these threads?
Well, I think a lot of it, I write very fast first drafts. So I like to write, like, go with the flow. And I know some people go back and edit as they're writing, but that's not me. I just want to get it all out, get the story out and see where it's taking me, because I'm not really a planner. I've got maybe 5 points that I know will happen. I know the twist. I know, hopefully some sort of resolution. And a few points, but I don't really know what's going to happen. So I write the story for myself to see what's going to happen. And then a lot of, I think, that sort of seamlessness and is then in the editing. I edit and edit and edit and edit. And I think that's where then I tie things into each other better there. So in fact, in a final edit, I was thinking, I need a location to do such and such. Oh no, I have to create a new location. But then I went, no, I've got that. I'm trying not to do spoilers of anything, but and I realized I had already had a location that I could use that existed, and then it was a really nice sort of circular storyline to bring it back there. So I think editing for me, but editing, like writing a story in a sort of furious kind of way and then editing more slowly, works quite well for me to make sure it all hangs together in a seamless way.
So let's talk about this actual manuscript then. You say you write your first draft in a furious way. So can you give us some timelines as to how long it took you to get that first draft out, and then how long was the editing process?
So I started just as the pandemic was hitting. So that was like, March 2020, February, March 2020. And in fact, the pandemic kind of crushed me in terms of creativity. And I was doing a final edit on The Good Teacher, my last book. So that was sort of easier to do because that was, just fixing up. And I sort of started in fits and starts, and then I thought, I just have to get on with it. So we got used to lockdown, we moved on. And I think for me, the thing about the pandemic was, I'm trying to write about what happens in a family and a community, and when things are terrible in a crisis point, and then the world was in this crisis point, and it was worse than anything that I could write. So I just think I felt like it was a story, you were living in your novel, it was playing out around you. So once I got used to that, I could go back to writing about tricky times in communities. So then I was actually finishing off a Master's of Creative Writing, so I did write a few chapters for that. And then I thought I have to hurry up, and I did NaNoWriMo.
Oh,
and so in November of, I guess that was 2020, I wrote about 45,000 words that month.
Wow, fantastic.
I know, and I was determined to get to the 50. And I remember I had to go to Canberra for something, and I'd taken the laptop. I'm like, okay, I'm at a friend's house, that's fine. I'll get up really early. I'll get up at 6. I'll just write. If I write 2,000 words today, 2,000 words tomorrow, I'll break the back of this, and I'll get through NaNoWriMo. And I opened my computer, and the whole thing had frozen, and I couldn't, and it had just stopped.
Oh no.
So it took me so thankfully they managed to, I had been doing backups, but not the day before, but I've been doing backups. But thankfully they managed to get all the stuff off the computer, but it took me 2 weeks then to get my laptop back. And then the editing process, so the editing process was a bit longer than usual because our schedule changed, which was the publishing schedule, nothing to do with, what I was doing. But then we had a structural edit sort of, I guess, December. Oh, yeah. So sorry, things took a bit longer. So I'm just trying to remember. It was a weird year. Yes. So I had a structural edit actually in about October, and then another
October
edit
the following year.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I normally do about 6 drafts myself. So if I do the first furious draft, and then I sit down and edit, then hand it to the publisher, then we have the structural edit.
So let's talk about those 6 drafts. In those 6 drafts, do you focus on a different thing in each draft, or do you just go in a linear fashion the whole way and fix whatever you can each time?
Yeah, I do the linear fashion. I know it's not the best use of my time, but I don't seem to be able to do it any other way. But I have a really good writing group, and some from the Australian Writers Centre who I met at a course there. And so I have a number of people that I can show it to. So I probably showed it, the first draft, to 3 people, did a redraft, showed the next draft to another 2 friends, and then took on board their comments and reworked it. And of course, what I felt once I'd read the draft and went, this isn't working, or that isn't working.
Now, some years ago, obviously 3 novels ago, or 4 novels now that you're writing the next one ago, you hadn't been published yet, and you did do some courses at the Australian Writers Centre and met a group of, fantastic peers who you're still in contact with. First of all, how useful was that course? And subsequently, with that writing cohort of friends, how useful is it to have those beta readers and just really just supporters?
Well, that course made me finish that novel, 6 Minutes. And I think for me, I was working, I had the kids, and it's hard, as we all know, it's hard to carve out time to write. It's not, you're not getting paid for it. No one's waiting for it. There's no deadline. So for me, doing that course, so that was the 6-month Write Your Novel course, it meant I had deadlines. I had to be, and I was doing it in person, so I had to be somewhere every Monday night. We gave each other feedback. We had Pamela Freeman, fantastic instructor. And it really helped me focus and say to both myself and my family, Mum's got homework, I've got to finish, put it in their terms. They were younger. And I felt it really helped me finish that book and then get feedback on it through the class. And then afterwards, so we kept going with about 5 of us, and shared another draft to them. And they were so helpful and so supportive. And we all write in different genres, but in a way, I think that worked quite well because they asked different sort of questions about the manuscript and more about motivations and why would that character do that, and I don't quite believe that. So they were focused, on the storytelling structure as well as like, do you think it should start here, or this, we haven't got quite enough clues to this, And I think, it's been wonderful. We see each other less now because people sort of moved apart, but moved away, not apart. And we're all at different stages now. But it's been really helpful and really, really very supportive. And I know people are scared to show their work to others, but to me, that's the only way how someone else can interpret it, because you're writing in your own bubble, in your own head, and you think, oh, everybody understands this character like I do. But no, a reader only has what you've written and their own imagination, which they bring to it. So they're creating, their own story in a way in their head. So I think, having other people read it and other people who are interested in writing and understand writing is so important and supportive.
It's so important. It fast tracks your development, doesn't it? Because you can eventually figure it out, but it could take you years instead of, a much, much shorter time if you get that feedback. Now, the
Yeah.
thing is, over the last few years, the last, 4 novels, you have developed your own writing craft. This book is just fantastic. Like, I'm not understand. Leanne Moriarty has said one of my favorite Australian writers, and I absolutely agree because it's just brilliant. So you're now at the stage where you have a greater mastery. We never master, we're always learning, but you have a greater mastery of the craft than back then. And you are actually one of our tutors as well. What do you enjoy about teaching the craft?
I think I just love writing and I love reading. So I love I love seeing what our students are writing and their imagination and things that come out. You think of an exercise. I think, oh, I'd never think that, but that's so fascinating where you've taken that story. So, firstly, that individual, the unique imagination and creativity of each person is absolutely fascinating. I mean, sometimes we think, oh, every story's been told, but in fact, everyone has such a different background, a different imagination, a different upbringing. They bring something to the same exercise and you get 15 completely different ideas. And I find that wonderful. And I just love seeing, I guess, light bulb moments when, so I've been doing creative writing stage 1, which is the early courses.
You've been teaching it.
Emerging writers. And some of them say, oh my gosh, now I understand about point of view, or oh, now that's why what I'm writing isn't working because I'm telling it from the wrong point of view. So just seeing the way they suddenly, it's like a light bulb moment, switch on to a concept about writing, and whether that's point of view or structure or tense or changing points of view. It's really so wonderful to see that, and then to see what they produce next, in the next week's assignment is amazing. And then to compare between the beginning of the course and the end of the course, it's really, really fabulous. I love it.
Now, you just mentioned point of view, and it is something that a lot of newer writers struggle with, and they don't get it quite right. Often because, and often they have a great story, but they're not writing it with an understanding of point of view. You totally understand it. You've got each chapter is written from a different person's point of view. There's, a handful of points of view in this book from different characters. So in terms of your characterization, in terms of you developing your main characters, what did you do to develop them? Was that something that also occurred on the page and you got to know them as you were writing, or did you have some sense of, or did you write a paragraph or something on each of these people before you started, so you knew what kind of headspace to get into? Because you kind of have to you do have to get into the headspace of a character where you're writing from their point of view.
Yeah, so I tend to write my way in. So I'd write maybe 5 chapters or so, each from a different point of view. And then I'll sit down and I'll do a bit more in-depth research about, so the detective, for example, we've got Chief Inspector Poole in the book, is one of the characters. And I sort of then did quite a bit of research about a chief inspector who'd have that size police station and how he'd speak and how he would interact with the public and other, his team.
How did you tell us, how did you do that research of that kind of chief inspector, of that size police, and all of that?
A lot of it was online. Well, this is a pandemic, so most of it was online. But researching a lot of, so now a lot of police stuff is on Facebook about how they're interacting with the community, stories about a new police inspector has started in a small town similar to Kinton Bay, which is fictional. So I was finding Facebook stories, newspaper stories, researching retirement stories. So I understood his arc of how he would become a chief inspector, like looking at those levels, looking at what was the other thing I looked at? What do you call it? Job specifications, like what do you need to be, a police officer, a detective, a chief inspector, looking at the ranks. And then I have, since 6 minutes, I'd interviewed a number of detectives. So I went back to one of those and asked her some questions about the chief inspector role. And she was great. So she told me, we just call ours boss. Like, I was saying, do you call him sir? What do you call him? And she's like, no, we just call him boss. And how many are in that team? And yeah, so, but a lot of it online because of the pandemic. And I would have liked to have done more. I kept thinking, I'll go to a police station in that sort of area. But in the end, I ended up doing most of it online in terms of that actual.
Interesting, because Kinton Bay is, as you say, it's fictional, but it feels very real on the page. And I feel like, I think I drove through something like this recently. Did you base it on a town though?
It's not real. It's based on an area rather than a town. So we used to go to Port Stephens on the sort of mid-north coast of New South Wales every Christmas, so in January holidays. And I like that feeling of, I really wanted a tourist town that sort of is so buzzing in summer, but then in winter everyone disappears, and you're sort of you're sort of struggling to make ends meet in the off season. And I like that idea of seasons. And in fact, my working title for this book was Bleak Season, because it was in winter, and it was sort of a lot about the seasons of change, but of summer and winter and what happens in the off season. But yes, Port Stephens is a much bigger town. It's lots of different suburbs. It's lots of different places, whereas this is just one small town.
In my head, it was just outside of Foster somewhere.
Yeah,
so
I know. Someone said to me, "You've based this on Foster, haven't you?" And I said, "No, not really." But
all right. So, the first book, which went so well, was 6 minutes. And then The Good Teacher, and now The Liars. How has the experience changed for you, the writing experience, obviously, over those 3 novels? Have you, found new efficiencies? Have you developed some systems? Because the first novel, you're kind of just doing whatever. But now you're down the track quite a bit. So is it different?
Well, I think I trust myself more. Although, having said that, I still, because everyone talks about planning, still when I sat down to write The Liars, I still spent about 4 weeks researching how to write a book. So how to plan a book, how to structure a book. And I keep thinking, I should plan more. How do I plan? And then eventually I'm like, that's not what I do. It's not my process. No. Trust yourself. And it's terrifying, setting off into writing 90,000 words or 100,000 words when you don't really have a plan. And so then I just have to say, now I know, trust yourself, just keep writing. And the answer is in the writing. The writing will make the story come. So I find that, I'm writing early morning is my best time. So if I write even just 300 words early morning, then the story's in my head, and I can come back to it when I've finished doing other stuff, come back to it and keep writing all through the day. But the thing is, I think when it's in your head, whatever else you're doing, you're thinking about it. And, you might be walking the dog, you might be driving the car, doing the washing, whatever it is, the story is still going over in your head. And then suddenly you go, oh, I know what's going to happen next. And it just comes to you because it's percolating, it's in the subconscious. And so I think that, trusting myself. And and I think I've got I love cliffhanger chapter endings. So I think I've really worked harder on those and worked out how to pull those off well. And endings are always hard, the ending of the book. And so I think I wrote the 6 minutes ending about 6 times, and I probably wrote this ending about 6 times as well. But I was
mean different ending? Completely different endings?
How the sort of the denouement, how it all, the climax, and then how it all finishes up. the resolution. And then, so with this ending of The Liars, I was, normally as a writer, you have so much self-doubt. And this final ending, I went, I am so happy with this ending. So I was really happy with that, writing that ending. But so I guess it's trust and confidence, as well.
Yes, definitely. So when you are in the throes of writing that first furious draft, do you spend all day doing it? Like what kind of, how much do you carve out of your day or that you dedicate to writing?
I try and spend most of the day, and I do still do some other, I'm doing other paid work for clients, so I do some of that and some teaching and some other things, but the majority of the day I would be doing.
Do you have a word count goal?
Just lately my word count goal was 2,000 words a day.
Oh my God, that's quite a lot.
Yeah, it was quite a lot. I didn't always achieve it. Sometimes I do 3,000, sometimes I do 1,000, and sometimes life just, other things happen, and one day I did take, that's right, I had to go away, and I took my laptop and I carried it around for 3 days and barely opened it, and I was and then it fell out of the car and I was worried it had broken. But when I did finally open it, I only wrote 300 words, but it was a pivotal moment, and I went, okay, that was worth it, to carry the laptop for 3 days on a trip away, but to get that pivotal thing that will now affect the rest of the book. So I could have just written that on my phone.
Do you listen to music, or do you do anything in particular to get into the headspace of the character in which you're writing that point of view that day?
No, I really just go and have a quick look at their last chapter of that character, and then I'll get into the headspace. I'm not very good at describing the characters in my first draft. So then at some point I think, I should try and work out what they all look like. And I think with The Liars, my editor said, all the men seem to have dark, wavy hair. I said, oh, okay, I'll fix that. So then I did end up going and making a sort of, screenshots of people, what they might look like, and so that I could describe them a bit better. And because I think for me, I'm so interested in the emotional side of the story, and the behaviors. To me, it doesn't matter what they look like.
Yes.
But obviously we need to know what people look like.
In terms of the dialogue and in terms of their inner monologue as well, which is the way they speak, even if it's to themselves, what did you do to make that so credible? It's not such a stretch to think that you would make Mary, the mother, credible, because she is a similar age to you, she's in a similar kind of situation. But in terms of the other people, the men, the young people, what did you do to get into that kind of to make sure that the words they said were believable?
I think partly I read a lot, so I think I read, I'm reading about a wide range of people in, fiction, non-fiction. I talk to a lot of people. And I don't know. I actually don't know the answer to that question, because I know what you mean, though. I guess once I decided Rollo, for example, he's a very laid-back character. He wants to please everyone. So his big fear is upsetting the apple cart. He doesn't want to, he wants to keep everyone happy. And obviously in this situation, he cannot. And so I guess I just really thought, how would he respond to this situation where he has to choose sides? He's got to upset someone, and how would he respond, and what would he be thinking? And I guess the same with the chief inspector. He's very on the straight and narrow. He has recently so dobbed in's the wrong word, uncovered a corrupt cop back in Sydney where he was working before, and so his inner monologue is about fairness and justice and doing the right thing. And I guess I just really tried to imagine them. I guess it's just imagining.
I can only assume you have a keen eye for observation, because that only comes, we all know a bloke like Rollo.
Yeah.
We do, right? But we don't, what an author needs to do is really observe that bloke to be able to capture those sorts of nuances on the page, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can only assume you really observe it.
Well, I think I'm really interested in people and what makes them tick. So I guess I'm trying to understand how would he behave, what would he be thinking, and really dig deep into that. And I have teenagers, and so the other character, Sienna's a 15-year-old,
I guess,
and her
yes.
brother. Yeah. So, and they're not, they're very different to my teenagers. But I guess I looked around at my own teenager and her friends, and also Sienna's a real campaigner and wants to change the world. And I'm in awe of these teenagers who are, going out there and doing so much. And so I really wanted to show that sort of character. And she's not quite Greta Thunberg, but she wouldn't mind if she was. But at the same time, that character, that teenager, they're so full of passion, but they don't actually have the experience and the knowledge to always do the right thing, or to get it right. So to me, that was an interesting dichotomy from an older point of view, to write that character, to be going down the track, and I can see she's doing the wrong thing, but she doesn't know that that's about to happen.
So many layers to this book. Okay, so I always end with, what are your top 3 tips to aspiring writers who would love to finally be in a position where you are one day?
The first is to read, but to read critically, to find out what's making the story work. And I read so many different books, so many different genres. But even, and I read newspaper stories, which gives me ideas as well, but see how other people are doing things, and how your story could sort of fit alongside those stories already in existence. Doing a course like at the Strata Writers Centre, which gives you deadlines. And the other thing with deadlines is submitting to prizes and competitions. And even if you think it's not good enough, there's no point submitting. One of the points of submitting is that it gives you a deadline to finish, that manuscript or that chapter or whatever it is. And I've had friends who have just put things in and said, I'll never win, and then they've been shortlisted. And they're like, wow, look at that. And that gives them a whole, new impetus to keep going on that story. My third one is to have a writers group, or have a group of supportive people around you who can read your manuscript, you can read theirs, and certainly, which I forgot to say earlier, by reading other people's manuscripts, you understand more about your own, you understand more about writing and about structure, and it helps you learn from what they're doing, good or bad, whether it's they're doing the right thing or they're making mistakes and it doesn't work. You can see that when you give feedback. So having writers groups is very good. So
Brilliant.
reading deadlines and writers groups.
I love it. Well, congratulations on The Liars. It's going to be huge. I absolutely know it. And thank you so much for your time today, Petronella.
Oh, thank you so much, Valerie. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.